I never imagined I'd be sharing a story like this. My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a close-knit family. Growing up in a modest suburban home in Ohio, it was always just me, my older brother Samuel, 36, and our parents John and Marie. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we never wanted for anything important. Our childhood was filled with typical family moments, weekend barbecues, holiday gatherings, and the occasional family vacation to nearby lakes. Dad worked as a high school teacher, and Mom ran a small bakery in town. They instilled in us the values of hard work, honesty, and financial responsibility from a young age. Samuel was always the golden child in many ways. 4 years my senior, he excelled in school, particularly in math and economics. I remember him tutoring me in algebra when I struggled, his patience wearing thin as I failed to grasp concepts that came so naturally to him. Despite our differences, we were close. He'd defend me fiercely against bullies at school, and I'd cover for him when he snuck out to meet girls. As we grew older, our paths diverged. I found my calling in nursing, drawn to the idea of helping others and making a difference in people's lives. The human body fascinated me, and I loved the challenge of learning complex medical procedures. Samuel, on the other hand, was drawn to the world of finance. He'd spend hours reading financial news and playing stock market simulations online. When he got accepted into a prestigious business school, our parents couldn't have been prouder. After college, I stayed close to home, working at the local hospital. The work was demanding but rewarding. I'd come home exhausted but fulfilled, knowing I'd made a difference in someone's life. Samuel, meanwhile, moved to New York City to pursue his finance career. He'd come home for holidays, regaling us with stories of high-stakes deals and lavish client dinners. I remember feeling a mix of awe and unease at his tales of excess. 5 years ago, our lives took a dramatic turn. Dad, always the picture of health, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. It came out of nowhere. He'd never smoked a day in his life. The diagnosis shattered our world. Mom was beside herself, barely able to keep the bakery running. I took a leave of absence from work to help care for Dad, while Samuel flew in every other weekend. Watching Dad's decline was heart-wrenching. The strong, vibrant man who'd taught us to ride bikes and helped with our homework withered away before our eyes. Through it all, he maintained his sense of humor and his concern for others. Even in his final days, he was more worried about how we were coping than about himself. During one of his more lucid moments, about a month before he passed, Dad called Samuel and me to his bedside. He spoke about his will, assuring us that everything would be split equally between us. "I've always treated you both fairly," he said, his voice weak but determined. "And that won't change after I'm gone." Samuel and I nodded, too choked up to speak. Dad fought hard, but he passed away 2 years after his diagnosis. The funeral was a blur of tears, hugs, and casseroles brought by well-meaning neighbors. In the weeks that followed, we all tried to find our new normal. Mom threw herself into baking, producing more pies and cakes than the bakery could sell. I returned to work, finding solace in the routine. Samuel went back to New York, promising to visit more often. A few months after Dad's passing, Mom called us over to discuss the will. As we sat around the kitchen table where we'd shared so many family meals, an odd tension filled the air. Mom looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting between Samuel and me. Samuel seemed unusually quiet, his usual confidence subdued. As Mom started going through the details, something felt off. The numbers didn't add up to what Dad had indicated. The vacation property, a small lakeside cabin where we'd spent summers fishing and roasting marshmallows, wasn't mentioned at all. And the savings were significantly less than what Dad had always said he'd put aside. I started asking questions, my nursing instincts kicking in, probing for answers. That's when things went sideways. Samuel exploded, his face turning red as he accused me of being greedy and ungrateful. "You have no idea what sacrifices have been made for this family," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. Mom burst into tears, begging us to stop fighting. It took hours of heated arguments and tearful confessions before the truth finally came out. Samuel, despite his high-paying job and apparent success, had been struggling financially for years. He'd made a series of bad investments, chasing the promise of quick returns. When those failed, he turned to online gambling, convinced he could recoup his losses. Instead, he'd racked up massive debts. Desperate and ashamed, he'd gone to Dad for help. And Dad, always protective of his children, had bailed him out. The vacation property had been sold to cover Samuel's debts. A large chunk of the savings had gone towards paying off his credit cards. Dad had done all this in secret, not wanting to worry Mom or disappoint me. The revelation felt like a physical blow, not just because of the money, but because of the years of deception. Dad, who'd always preached honesty, had been lying to us for years. Mom had known about it and said nothing, and Samuel had essentially stolen my inheritance. The argument that followed was ugly. Samuel, cornered and defensive, lashed out. He insisted he deserved the money more because he had a family to support. He'd married his college sweetheart, Sarah, and they had 2 young kids. You're single, Emma, he spat. What do you need the money for? To buy more scrubs? His words stung, dismissing my career and my choices in one cruel swoop. I left that day feeling like my whole world had been turned upside down. The family I thought I knew, the honest, hardworking people I'd looked up to my whole life, suddenly felt like strangers. My brother had stolen from me, my father had lied to me, and my mother had allowed it all to happen. In the 3 weeks since then, I've been grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at Samuel for his selfishness and deception, disappointment in Dad for enabling Samuel's behavior and going against his own principles, hurt that Mom had kept this from me for so long, and a deep, aching sadness for the loss of the family I thought I had. I haven't spoken to Samuel since that day. He sent a few text messages, alternating between defensive justifications and half-hearted apologies, but I can't bring myself to respond. Mom keeps calling and leaving tearful voicemails, begging me to forgive them, to understand that they were just trying to protect the family. But I don't know if I can. The trust is broken, and I'm not sure how to move forward. Part of me wants to fight for what should have been mine. It's not even about the money anymore. It's about justice, about honoring what Dad originally intended. But another part just wants to walk away from all of this mess, to start fresh somewhere far from the weight of family expectations and secrets. I'm torn between my love for my family and my sense of what's right. The values I thought we shared, honesty, fairness, responsibility, seem to have meant nothing in the face of Samuel's troubles. Should I let it go for the sake of family peace? Or should I stand my ground and demand what's rightfully mine? As I write this, sitting in my small apartment surrounded by photos of happier times, I honestly don't know what to do. The future I thought I had, one where my brother and I would support Mom together, where we'd gather for holidays and share in each other's joys and sorrows, seems impossibly out of reach. How do you rebuild trust once it's been so thoroughly shattered? I'm hoping that by sharing this story I might find some clarity. Maybe someone out there has been through something similar and can offer advice. Or maybe just putting it all down in words will help me figure out my next steps. Whatever happens, I know things will never be the same. The only question is, where do we go from here? Update 1. It's been about 2 months since my last post, and to say a lot has happened would be an understatement. I want to start by thanking everyone who responded to my original post. Your advice, support, and even your criticisms helped me gain some much-needed perspective on this whole mess. After much soul-searching and several sleepless nights, I decided I couldn't just let this go. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up for what's right, about honoring Dad's original wishes, and about holding Samuel accountable for his actions. With a mix of determination and trepidation, I contacted a lawyer who specializes in estate disputes. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia, listened to my story with a mix of sympathy and professional detachment. She warned me that cases like this can be challenging, especially when they involve family, but she believed I had a solid case based on the original terms of the will. We spent hours going over every detail, digging into financial records, and building a strategy. When Samuel and Mom found out I was pursuing legal action, all hell broke loose. Samuel called me in a rage, his words a mix of threats and pleas. "You're tearing this family apart," he shouted. "Is this really what Dad would have wanted?" The irony of him invoking Dad's wishes wasn't lost on me. Mom's reaction was equally painful. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, tears streaming down her face, begging me to reconsider. "We're all you have," she cried. "Don't throw that away over money." Their reactions only strengthened my resolve. I realized that for years, they'd used emotional manipulation to maintain the status quo. It was time to break that cycle. The legal process has been slow, stressful, and more complicated than I ever imagined. We've had meetings with lawyers, mediators, and financial advisors. Each session revealed new layers to Samuel's deception and the extent of the financial damage he'd caused. It turns out the situation was even worse than I initially thought. Not only had Samuel taken my share of the inheritance, but he'd also convinced Mom to remortgage the family home to lend him more money. The debt was astronomical, far beyond anything I'd imagined. I couldn't help but wonder how he'd managed to dig himself into such a deep hole. Throughout this process, I've learned more about Samuel's lifestyle, and it's been a shock. Despite claiming he needed the money for his family, he'd been living way beyond his means. There were expensive cars, lavish vacations, a country club membership, all while he was crying poverty to our parents. It made me sick to my stomach, thinking of Dad working extra shifts at school to help fund Samuel's extravagant lifestyle. One of the most surprising turns of events came when Samuel's wife, Sarah, reached out to me privately. We'd always been friendly, but never particularly close. She asked to meet me for coffee, away from Samuel and the kids. When we met, I was struck by how tired and stressed she looked. Sarah was horrified when she learned the full extent of Samuel's actions. Apparently, he'd kept her in the dark about a lot of it, telling her the money was from bonuses at work or successful investments. She'd had no idea about the remortgaged house or the extent of his gambling. She apologized profusely, tears in her eyes, and offered to help me in any way she could. With Sarah's help, we managed to piece together a clearer picture of Samuel's finances. It was worse than anyone had imagined. He wasn't just in debt. He was on the verge of bankruptcy. The inheritance money had been a band-aid on a gaping wound, and now that it was gone, everything was unraveling. As for Mom, she's been a mess throughout this whole process. She flip-flops between defending Samuel and begging me to drop the lawsuit. One day she's telling me I'm just like my father, standing up for what's right. The next, she's accusing me of being selfish and heartless. I've tried to explain that this isn't just about me, but about honoring Dad's wishes and holding Samuel accountable. But she's so blinded by maternal love and her own guilt that she can't see how Samuel has manipulated her for years. The lawsuit is ongoing, and it's taking a toll on all of us. I'm exhausted, both emotionally and financially. There are days when I wonder if it's worth it, if I should just walk away and try to rebuild my life without them. But then I think of Dad, of how hard he worked his whole life to provide for us, and I know I have to see this through. It's not just about recouping what's rightfully mine anymore. It's about exposing the truth and hopefully helping Samuel face the consequences of his actions before he drags the whole family down with him. Maybe, I think in my more optimistic moments, this will be the wake-up call he needs to turn his life around. I know this fight might cost me my relationship with my family. There are nights when I lie awake, wondering if I'm doing the right thing. But then I remind myself that they're the ones who betrayed me first. They're the ones who chose lies and secrets over honesty and fairness. As I navigate this legal battle, I'm also trying to take care of myself. I've started seeing a therapist to help process everything. I'm leaning on friends more, finally opening up about what's been going on. Their support has been a lifeline in my darkest moments. I don't know how this will all end, but I do know that I'm fighting for more than just money. I'm fighting for the truth, for justice, and for the values that I thought my family believed in. I just hope that someday, they'll understand why I had to do this. Update 2. It's been another 3 months and I'm back with another update. The situation has evolved in ways I never expected, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. The lawsuit was progressing slowly, with both sides digging in their heels. Samuel continued to paint me as the villain, telling anyone who would listen that I was trying to bankrupt him and leave his children destitute. It was painful to hear these lies spread about me, especially to family friends who'd known us since childhood. Mom was still caught in the middle, though she had started to ask more questions about Samuel's spending habits. I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes, the gradual realization that perhaps she'd been blind to Samuel's faults for too long. Then, about a month ago, everything changed. I was on the night shift at the hospital when I got a frantic call from Sarah. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. Samuel had disappeared. He'd cleared out their joint bank account and taken off, leaving behind only a vague note about fixing things. Sarah was beside herself, especially since she'd recently discovered she was pregnant with their third child. The next few weeks were chaos. We filed a missing persons report, but the police didn't seem too concerned, saying Samuel had left voluntarily. Sarah and I put our differences aside and worked together to try and track him down. It was during this process that we discovered the true extent of Samuel's deceptions. As we dug through his papers and emails, a picture emerged of a man living a complete double life. There were secret credit cards, a girlfriend in another city, and even a small apartment that none of us knew about. It was like uncovering the life of a stranger, not the brother I thought I knew. But the biggest shock came when we discovered that Samuel hadn't just stolen from our inheritance. He'd been embezzling from his company for years. The bonuses he'd told Sarah about were actually stolen funds. It was staggering how long he'd managed to keep this house of cards from collapsing. As the days turned into weeks with no sign of Samuel, we all started to fear the worst. Sarah was struggling to keep it together for the kids, who couldn't understand where their daddy had gone. Mom oscillated between anger at Samuel for running away and worry that something terrible had happened to him. Then, about 2 weeks after he disappeared, we got the call we'd been dreading. Samuel's body had been found in a hotel room several states away. He'd taken his own life, leaving behind a long letter explaining everything. The letter was a mix of apologies, justifications, and bitter accusations. He blamed everyone but himself for his actions, our parents for spoiling him, me for not being more understanding, his company for not paying him what he thought he was worth. Reading it, I felt a complex mix of emotions: anger, grief, pity, and a deep, aching sadness for the brother I thought I knew. The aftermath has been brutal. Mom is inconsolable, blaming herself for not seeing the signs. She keeps going through old photo albums, as if searching for the moment where things went wrong. Sarah is left to deal with the fallout of Samuel's actions while preparing for a new baby. The kids are confused and heartbroken, too young to fully understand what's happened. And me? I'm still trying to come to terms with it all. The lawsuit is now moot, but the financial mess Samuel left behind is monumental. His company is pursuing legal action against his estate, which means whatever assets are left will likely be seized. The house will probably have to be sold to cover the debts. I've been trying to support Sarah and the kids as much as I can. Despite everything, they're still family. But it's hard. Every time I look at them, I'm reminded of Samuel's betrayal. The children, especially, are a bittersweet reminder of the complexities of this situation. They're innocent in all of this, yet they'll bear the consequences of their father's actions for years to come. I'm angry at Samuel for his selfishness, at my parents for enabling him, and at myself for not seeing what was happening sooner. But mostly, I'm just sad. Sad for the brother I thought I had, sad for the family we used to be, and sad for the innocent people hurt by Samuel's actions. I don't know what the future holds for us. The family I knew is gone, replaced by something I'm still struggling to understand. But amidst all this darkness, I'm trying to find glimmers of hope, in the resilience of Sarah, in the innocence of the children, in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, we can build something new from the ashes of what we've lost. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update and a year since this whole nightmare began. I've hesitated to post again because, honestly, I'm not sure how to put everything into words, but I feel like I owe it to those who have followed my story and offered support. The dust has finally started to settle, but the landscape of my life is unrecognizable from what it was a year ago. The lawsuit was dropped after Samuel's death, but the financial aftermath has been catastrophic. As expected, the family home had to be sold to cover Samuel's debts. It was heartbreaking to watch Mom pack up decades of memories, each trinket and photograph a reminder of happier times. Mom has moved in with me temporarily while she figures out her next steps. It's challenging, to say the least. We're both still processing our grief and anger, and living together has brought up a lot of unresolved issues. There are days when we can barely look at each other, the weight of everything that's happened hanging heavy between us. But there are also moments of connection, of shared memories, and tentative hope for the future. Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl 2 months ago. She named her Alexandra, after Samuel. I have mixed feelings about it, but I'm trying to be supportive. The first time I held Alexandra, I was struck by how much she looked like Samuel as a baby. It brought up a flood of emotions I wasn't prepared for: grief for the brother I lost, anger at his actions, and a fierce protectiveness for this innocent child who will never know her father. Sarah and the kids are struggling, both emotionally and financially. I've been helping out where I can, babysitting the older kids or bringing over groceries. It's a delicate balance, though. I'm still processing my own grief and anger, and sometimes it's hard to separate those feelings from my interactions with them. But watching the kids play, oblivious to the adult complexities around them, reminds me of the importance of moving forward. The most unexpected development has been my relationship with Sarah. In the wake of all this tragedy, we've grown close. She's apologized countless times for her role in the deception, even though she was as much a victim as anyone. We've spent a lot of time talking, crying, and trying to make sense of everything. There's a part of me that wonders if our growing closeness is healthy, given everything that's happened, but right now, she's the only person who truly understands what I'm going through. Mom is not doing well. She swings between bouts of deep depression and manic attempts to fix everything. One day she'll barely get out of bed. The next she'll be planning elaborate family dinners as if nothing has changed. She's in therapy now, which I hope will help, but our relationship is strained. I'm trying to forgive her for her part in all this, but it's a slow process. Every time I think we're making progress, something will remind me of the years of deception, and I'll feel that anger rising again. As for me, I'm taking it one day at a time. I've thrown myself into my work, picking up extra shifts at the hospital to keep busy and to help with the extra expenses. The routine and focus required in nursing have been a lifeline, giving me purpose when everything else feels chaotic. I've also started seeing a therapist to work through my feelings of betrayal, loss, and guilt. It's hard work, confronting these emotions, but I know it's necessary if I want to move forward. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what life would be like if I'd never questioned the will that day. Would we still be a happy, if oblivious, family? But then I remind myself that the truth would have come out eventually, probably in an even more devastating way. I'm not sure what the future holds. The family I knew is gone, replaced by this broken, complicated new reality. But I'm trying to find hope in small things. In Sarah's strength as she raises 3 children on her own, in the resilience of my nieces and nephew, in the small moments of connection with Mom as we navigate our new relationship. This will be my final update. Thank you to everyone who has followed this journey and offered support. Your words have been a comfort in my darkest moments. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's the importance of honesty and the danger of secrets. No matter how painful the truth might be, it's always better than a comforting lie. As I close this chapter of my life, I'm not sure what the next one will bring. But I know that whatever happens, I'll face it with the strength and resilience I've discovered in myself through this ordeal. And maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to build something new and beautiful from the ashes of what we've lost.